Bandwidth for this podcast is brought to you by Ideate Software. Be sure to check out all of their great Revit applications designed to increase your productivity.
Hello and welcome to BIM Thoughts. No, I am not Bill, I am Carl. And I have along with me Dana and our great guest today, Antonio, who is here to talk about IFC.js. But before we get to that, of course, we have that famous BIM Thoughts question we always have to ask. So Antonio, define yourself.
Whoa, that's a very hard question because I'm an architect. I studied architecture here in Spain, but then suddenly got into the software world. So I'd say that, yeah, even though I love architecture, I love buildings, I also love code. So I'm moving between those two worlds.
That's not a bad spot to be in. I think we're seeing more and more of that, you know, in the AEC and BIM world. A lot of people that start off doing architecture and see that, not that things can be better, but, you know, 10, 15 years ago, code wasn't built for the way we do things. And now there's a lot of people that are getting in to do things with the advent of things like visual programming, like a Dynamo, right, Dana, that are making the process a little bit easier for us that aren't code thinkers like myself. I certainly dabble, but logic is not my strong suit, and don't you all laugh. So I think that's a valid effort. What is it that specifically got you started to go down the coding? Was it one specific thing, or you just kind of leaned that way for a while and just liked that better?
Actually, it was very, it wasn't something I did on purpose. I finished the degree here in Spain. Then I worked for a couple of studios, working mainly with Revit, both designing and execution projects and so on. Then I got a call from SIPE, which is the biggest BIM software company here in Spain. They're dedicated to creating software for structure analysis, energy analysis, and so on. I got into the company mainly as a product owner, you could say, or tester, also a tester. And I had breakfast every day with computer engineers that work there programming. And, you know, they were talking every single day about what they did. And, you know, being surrounded by people talking about code was something that perhaps made me feel like it was the time to perhaps get into the world, at least to be able to follow the conversations in the morning. So yeah, I started there mainly with Revit API because Revit was something I knew, and C# didn't look very hard. Then after that, I didn't want to spend the rest of my coding days inside Revit. So I jumped straight into web development. And yeah, that's where I am right now.
Nice. And I don't blame you for wanting to spend the rest of your days inside the Revit API for development. It's not a very nice place to be, I can tell you that. And again, from a little experience, I know enough about all these things to know that I don't want to do them. How about the IFC.js project? What can you tell us about that? I've seen quite a bit of it lately on LinkedIn and through social media. We have a common friend who's working with the project now, Brody Scott, that has been telling me that I've got to get Antonio on the podcast to talk about IFC.js. So what is this project? What can you tell us about it before you show it to us? That's the beauty of video, is we get to see the product in action.
Yeah, great. So to be honest, the project started as a pet project. I was, I think, 1.5 years ago, I was learning JavaScript and web technologies, and I wanted a project to get started, and not just a small personal project that only I knew. I wanted a real project with real users, and I found out that 3.js, which is the most important 3D library for the web, didn't have any BIM capabilities. And I thought that because I was working with IFC every day in SIPE, perhaps I could contribute with that, like making something that hopefully would be able to read IFC files and display them in 3D. And that's where it started. Like, it wasn't something I really planned to finish. It was more like a hobby. And then it began gaining some traction, because the truth is that the other libraries of IFC out there perhaps do not have a direct connection with 3D, and being able to, display BIM files directly in the browser was something very, very exciting for a lot of people. Then more people started to join the project, and we realized that, I have worked in a BIM software company, and I realized that what happens in the BIM market is that every company makes some development and keep all the development for themselves, right? So if you want to start learning how to make BIM applications, there's literally nothing. There's no libraries, there's no documentation where to start. What if tomorrow you want to make something similar to Revit, right? Something similar to AutoCAD. There's absolutely no documentation about that, no resources, no libraries. And that is completely the opposite to what happens in any other technology and in any other industry. If you want to start making video games, you watch a couple of tutorials and you have something, obviously something very primitive, but it's something you can do right away. That also happens in web development. That also happens in any other type of application development. And we thought okay, and what would happen if we did the same thing for BIM? What would happen if tomorrow, literally anyone, even people with not a lot of code experience, could sit down and develop 3D BIM applications? And that's the project, really. The project tries to solve that question. What would happen if BIM was something that you could do by yourself, not rely on third-party vendors, right? Because usually when we talk about BIM, we all say, BIM is not a software, it's a process. But in the end, to be able to carry out that processes and that strategies, we need software. And we always rely on third-party software, licenses, and so on. And IFC.js is not finished, but it allows to basically create BIM apps from scratch for all the platforms, both web, native, mobile. And it uses the same technology as Forge, as Autodesk Forge, under the hood. So the plan is that not in a very long time, everyone will have the tools, very, very easy, to be able to create their own BIM apps that will be able to have the same quality as Forge and the same capabilities. That's IFC.js.
That's pretty exciting, and a couple things that I want to ask from there. So the same engine is Forge, but it's not running off Forge. So it's separate from Forge, but similar to Forge.
Forge uses 3.js under the hood. 3.js is simply a library that enables to create 3D in the web really easily. And we use also 3.js. In fact, we are the official IFC module for 3.js. So we are collaborating with them, with 3.js. They are helping us. And there's nothing, technically speaking, there's nothing that stops us from getting where Forge is today.
Well, I like that, because I know a lot of people have built great things on top of Forge, but I know other people, and Bill's not here, he's one that likes to mention that some of the downside, the way that you have to have credits to run on top of Forge specifically, not the back end of it that runs it. So that's good to know. I'm also was a little excited to hear the idea that you're looking to be the platform that people can build other things on top of. That sounds very similar to what the folks at highpower.io are trying to do with their software. They're not looking to be just generative design, but they're a platform where you can create your own code and add it into using them as the, I guess, framework. Might not be exactly the right terminology, but you can build it on top of the HighPower technology instead of building it. I think what you're doing is a little bit different, but the idea of sharing instead of keeping it for yourself.
Yeah, to be it's not exactly a platform. It's more like a, to build Revit, you need perhaps 1 million hours, right? 1 million hours from a specialized software engineer. Well, we are spending those hours for free, forever, for everyone. We are putting those hours in a place where like anyone can reach, so that if you start making things with IFC.js, it's like perhaps getting into Autodesk offices, getting into a computer. In that computer, you don't have to build a beam app from scratch, right? Because there's a lot of work that other people have done before you. That's the idea. It's not, IFC.js is not a company, it's not a product, it's not a platform. We are not making money from it. We won't make money from it as a product. It's just, it's an open source library. I mean, it sounds super strange, but this is super common in any other industry.
And that's good to know. And it's good to know that distinction because, again, as you mentioned, architectural background, got into coding. A lot of people that listen to this understand what coding is from a high level, but they haven't built their own library for sure. So I think that's good to just have that distinction, that separation. I'm wondering if you're also seeing some, how do I want to say this? The idea of things like a Blender and Blender BIM, again, open source, free platforms that the Blender BIM add-in sits on top of Blender, which has been around for a while to give you the ability to create some BIM functionality in a free open source product. Again, I know it's separate, but the idea that open source is coming to the AEC, it's been something that's been kind of on the outskirts. And even the big companies like Autodesk and ArchiCAD and all those people that are embracing things like IFC and BCF as open source standards, I guess is the best way to bring it into place, is something that maybe drove you to where you are today, but for using IFC as the platform that you're working with because it's an open standard to build on top of it. You're not basing it off of DWG or RVT or any other proprietary format. IFC is open standard for all.
Yeah, this is exactly like, usually when a library comes up, that means that there's a problem that nobody has solved before. Ironically, the success of our library, in my opinion, is inversely proportional to how easy it is to use IFC. Yes, of course, we need open formats, and IFC is fantastic because it allows different people from different software vendors to be able to communicate with each other without relying on specific ecosystems where you can never escape without losing your data. But one of the reasons actually why you don't see that many players in the BIM software market is because IFC is a nightmare to implement. And that means that if you cannot afford to have a team of specialized developers working on it 40 hours a week, you cannot implement your BIM application, because the moment you want to implement a BIM application, you want to import and export data, and IFC, it's pretty much the only way you have to do that. So yeah, we are trying to solve that problem, the problem of communication.
Well, I'm really glad that you took up that torch, because it's over my head, but I know enough to appreciate what it is that you're doing. Dana, you've been sitting there quietly taking this all in. Any thoughts or comments about what Antonio and the IFC team are doing before we hop into the show and tell?
Well, I am mostly curious about your coding background. I know we kind of glazed over that at the beginning, but did you learn coding early on? Is that something that you learned in your later professional career? Were you a coding kid? I guess that's more of my question. Is when along your path did you really start to code, or is that always been a passion for you?
Yeah, a lot of people are surprised, but actually the first time I got into code was, I believe, 2 years ago, perhaps, and that was with the Revit API. And I don't really think you need a lifelong code background to make big things. Usually, we tend to believe that software engineers or people that have been coding since they were childs are the only people that have the right to code. But in the end, coding is like learning a language. You just watch tutorials every day, you start building things, and in the end, suddenly one day you wake up and you are someone doing a library. So that's pretty much like, there's no mystery. If you want, I can point you to the courses that I did or the people that I used as teachers. But actually, in my opinion, learning how to code is very, very easy today. There's a lot of courses, very, very cheap or even free. And it's just a matter of
immersion, right? Really dedicating yourself and just do it.
Actually, I think the key is not giving up, because the Dunning-Kruger curve, this curve that like reflects your confidence against the amount of knowledge you have over a specific matter. And when you start realizing how little code you know, it is easy to give up. And I think that if you overcome that desperation valley, I think it's the name, you can actually keep going, and in the end you can go very far. In fact, in the company I worked for before, there were a lot of programmers that were actually architects or engineers. I mean, I think that at least here in Spain, engineers, like not software engineers, but other kinds of engineers, have been coding for a long time, and like it's nothing special. Like some of them like coding, they just start coding and they get hired by software companies, and that's it. So I don't think, I think this is something everyone can do if they want.
Well, that's incredibly inspiring. Just keep at it.
Yeah, thank you.
And look at that, just as we're getting ready to do the show and tell, Bill appears. He's got that perfect timing. So, Bill,
What?
This is Antonio. Antonio, this is Bill. We've been talking about his journey from architect to coding, and that it was a very short one, only 2 years, and that how he's developed the library. We've learned that.
Wow, he must have done some quick code.
Some IFC.js is a library, and that was one of the points that he just made, that you don't have to be a professional computer scientist to do something great like he's doing.
Oh,
so
let's hear more.
We are just about to turn it over to Antonio to share his screen and to give us a demo of what he's been working on. So
Great.
The floor is yours, Antonio.
I'm excited. Sorry I'm late. This will all be in the podcast, right? So sorry I'm late.
So,
all right.
I will share my screen.
Awesome.
So can you see it? Can you see?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We can.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, great. So as I was saying before, IFC.js is a project which aims to solve the problem that we have one of the problems that we have in the industry, which is that we don't have many BIM software companies, which means that like this is more or less an oligopoly in which you have these big software companies that have 90% of the market, and then sniper companies that have the rest. And one of the reasons is that you don't find many libraries or documentation or tutorials on how to get started to make your own BIM applications, which is something that you can find in any other industry. For instance, if you want to make a video game, you can start right away. If you want to make a mobile application, you have tons of tutorials, tons of tools, free tools. So yeah, the ambition that we have is to be the first library, or I mean, there are more libraries. We want to be like perhaps the entry point or the place where people go when they want to start building BIM applications and they don't know where to start. So IFC.js is basically a library, which when I say library, is like if I say tool, it's more or less a synonym that allows anyone to create 3D BIM applications in any JavaScript runtime environment, which includes any browser, includes desktop applications, includes mobile applications. Like JavaScript is like everywhere. You can build anything with JavaScript. And for instance, this is the documentation page, by the way. You can visit that and like get more information on the project. But if you go down, you see that we have some files here. These are BIM applications directly integrated with the documentation. They are being parsed directly by Google Chrome in my case. And yeah, this is something that is completely integrated here. Also, we had some more demos because JavaScript is something you can execute pretty much in any web page. Some time ago, we did a demo in which we went to Twitter and we actually put a BIM model inside one of my tweets. Let's see if I can find the tweet. But it was super interesting because a lot of times we have the notion that BIM is only what happens inside proprietary software applications, but actually this kind of initiative, in my opinion, is something that demonstrates that in the end, BIM is not different from any other technology. Yeah, this one. If it works, yeah. Will it work? Yep. So yeah, you see that I have a 3D model here directly. It integrates with the Twitter style. If I change that to white, this will also change. I can move around, I can get inside the model, and that's Twitter. I mean, this is directly Twitter. And this is just an example, but with IFC.js, you can do this kind of stuff. You can integrate BIM models everywhere, not only inside a desktop BIM application. You can bring BIM to wherever you want. Also, another thing that we are doing with this work, we are trying to make it easy for everyone to create BIM applications because we are aware that a lot of architects are starting to code now or want to get into this code world, but they are very afraid when they see very complex APIs. So for instance, I can show you this. This is Visual Studio Code. This is simply a tool, a text editor that a lot of people use to create BIM applications, right? And I'm gonna show you a BIM viewer that is made in 20 lines of JavaScript. And just with those 20 lines, I'm using IFC.js, and this has enough to create the 3D view that I can navigate around, I can load files. I think it's here actually, yeah. I mean, obviously this is a super basic application, but I am able to actually load files from my computer, not only simple files, I can also load bigger files, right? I can select elements, I can see properties, I can change the aspect of this building, and I can pretty much do anything I want here. And yeah, basically this is exactly like, as I was saying, this uses the same technology as Forge uses. So in the end, the possibilities are endless because we're giving people a 3D viewer that is able to import and export and edit BIM data. We are giving them the tools to edit that data. And because I'm in the web, I'm in JavaScript, I can simply use simple HTML and CSS. Obviously, this is also compatible with more sophisticated tools like, I don't want to get too technical because I don't know like how familiar you are with this, but you can really use this with other tools like React, Angular, Vue. Yeah, just before the podcast today, I was actually experimenting with Electron, which is a JavaScript tool that allows to convert JavaScript code into native code, which means that the same 20 lines that I have here can be used to create a desktop application that can be compiled both for Windows, Mac, and Linux. And this is something that is not finished yet, but I have it here. Like this is a super simple desktop application that is executed natively in Windows. So I can obviously click here. Yeah, let's choose another file. Yeah, and have all the things that like the library provides, which are clipping planes, 3D dimensions, properties, and that is growing. We are providing more and more functionalities. So hopefully, our goal is that if tomorrow one architect that perhaps doesn't like very much like designing buildings or constructing buildings is able to say, okay, I want to do this for a living. I want to create BIM tools because that's what I like. I like video games, I like programming, perhaps I like computers more than buildings, and this is what I love, and this is what I want to specialize in. And yeah, this is basically the piece that you need to create your own BIM applications. And this is super important because all the applications that you create with IFC.js belong to you. I mean, you can sell products using this. It is literally like giving everyone the key to get into the BIM software market. We are all aware that the opinions about some of the big BIM software companies, it's not very good. We had this complaint letter not very long time ago. So, like, okay, the question is, criticizing is easy, but now you have the tools to actually say, I can do it better. I can do better than them because, like, they get a lot of money. They don't, develop quick enough. They don't deliver features quick enough. Perhaps it's time to actually do this ourselves. Even though this might sound very naive, I've actually had a lot of meetings with big companies, supermarket companies that are paying hundreds of dollars, or thousands or even millions of dollars a year to use Autodesk Forge to manage their assets. And in the end, they are like, we know that we don't get what we want using Forge. We wish there was another way to do the same thing, to manage our BIM assets without having to rely on this abusive license system. And this kind of technology allow these kind of companies to build their own application, which on the other hand, is what happens in literally any other field in the company. For instance, if the company is not happy with the software that is available for staff management or salary management or bill management, they can actually make their own software to handle their information. This enables them to do the same with BIM. If you don't want to pay to another company to handle or to manage your assets, you can do it by yourself very easily, very flawlessly. And even though JavaScript is perhaps has this reputation of not being the most efficient language, actually, even though the library is thought for JavaScript, the core is built in C++, and that means that this technology has almost the same speed as native applications, which means that if you take any application like BIM Vision and you take our IFC.js, the speed of loading big IFCs is very, very similar, with the difference that with IFC.js, you are not only creating your own application, but you are also able to compile that to the web, compile that to desktop, and literally do whatever you want. Like tomorrow, if I wanted, I could make or build my own BIM Vision and build a company out of that, or perhaps create my own CDE. For instance, one thing that I did not a long time ago for a presentation of the Building Smart we were invited in, we created a super, super simple CDE system inside Google Drive. And the idea was like, okay, Google Drive has some, I mean, I'm saying CDE informally. I know that there's a specification before you say anything, okay, but this is like just an example to show that it is really easy to get started building things that are not just like small scripts to make your daily life easier. You can actually build applications. You can build anything you want. For instance, if I go here, I get this super simple button. If I click there, it processes that file, downloads that using the Google API, and download the file and displays that here in the browser. And I'm able to navigate that around. And this is something anyone with access to that folder will be able to do, installing a Google Chrome extension. And yeah, I mean, the possibilities are endless. Right now, we have a Discord channel that is open, and there's a lot of companies building their own BIM software and commercializing that software on top of IFC.js. And that's the goal. The goal is to populate the BIM software market with smaller players to be able to...
Oh, it looks like you're back now. We lost you for a second, Antonio.
Yeah, sorry. So, yeah, did you see the Google Drive thing? Or...
We did. We saw that, and I think that's really cool. I remember seeing the the process of voting to get the people that got to go to the Building Smart event to present their idea. The one thing that I did want to ask is, did you say that this was an add-in through Chrome? Like it's the extension is what's running the crude CDE?
Yeah, in this specific case, I mean, this is a web application that I've deployed in GitHub for free. So this is just a regular web application. But to be able to display this little guy here, I'm simply manipulating the HTML with reverse engineering with a Chrome extension. But yeah, if you just want this,
gotcha.
Yeah, it's basically it. But in the end, I mean, yeah, the point is that you can build BIM applications that are capable of accessing all the data and create new data and edit the existing data, and build menus around, and in the end, create your own BIM commercial solution for free. And you know, right now we believe that one of the main problems of a lot of the open source initiatives you see out there is that there's like 2 or 3 guys that are the authors of the library, and if they disappear or if their life change and they don't have as much time to like put into the library, in the end the project disappears because it's not future proof. Like you cannot promise that in 10 years you will be still there solving issues, right? So what we are doing right now, we are trying to make this project future proof. And even though it's very young, it's less than a year actually. I think that serious development started in February, more or less. But yeah, we have now come up with this system, which is a system that is trying to involve companies. And it's super simple, right? We are all trying to create BIM applications. And obviously, IFC.js is free. You can use it for free for commercial purposes forever. You don't have to quote us, even though we would appreciate it. It's not necessary. But if you decide to, like, obviously, IFC.js gives you the base, gives you like the template to create a BIM application, but probably you will need to add some logic to build your business, right? If you put some of this effort back in the library, you get disadvantages, which basically is you get into the internal development team, you get a say in the direction of the project, and you get obviously early access to new functionalities. And with this system, we are trying to give a voice or to give power to those people or those companies to contribute to the project. So that if in the future, right now we are talking with, I think, 3 or 4 companies. These are like the companies that join in the beginning, but we are now talking with 3 or 4 companies. Some of them have thousands of employees, and they are super interested. And my idea is that in the future, if there's like 20 companies involved, all of them will be putting effort back in the library, and all the companies and all the people that use the project will benefit from that effort. If you take a look at any of the BIM software companies, for instance, Autodesk, or what I say Autodesk because it's the biggest one, but any other is also like, it could be any of them. They put like 10 hours in a software and they are the only one that use those 10 hours, right? But in this project, if you put 10 hours in IFC.js, and 10 hours, I mean 10 hours coding and then save that code back to the library, hundreds of companies are benefiting from those 10 hours, which in my opinion, is probably closer to the concept of automation than what we see in LinkedIn nowadays, right? Like, for instance, I'm very upset because usually when we talk about BIM and automation, we see these people with the Revit API or with Dynamo solving things that Revit should have right from the start, but doesn't. So they are like trying to find a workaround to those problems. But I'm very angry because a lot of times these people is like literally implementing the same solution over and over again, instead of saying, okay, Revit has this problem. We all have to suffer this. Why don't we just implement this once and give this for everyone so that like we all can benefit from that effort. Like a lot of people complain about Revit, but in my opinion, if someone had actually solved those problems only once and put that as an open source project, that would be solved already. And I'm very surprised when I see like companies that are able to create a whole business model on top of the things that Revit lack. So they make you automation things. I mean, I think it's a great business model, but to me it's surprising because it's a reflection on how individualistic our industry is. We don't want to share what we do. And as a consequence, we have to do it over and over again. You want to implement whatever, start from scratch. There's no other way. Or pay someone to start from scratch for you. And with this system that we are trying to foster in IFC.js, we are trying to bring what other industry have to our industry, because I really don't think we deserve less than other industries. And yeah, that's the whole idea. And the moment we have more companies here, we will have a product that not only gives anyone the capability of building a professional BIM application from scratch for any platform, but also will decouple a lot of companies of paying like millions of dollars to big software vendors to manage their BIM assets or BIM products or BIM objects or whatever you want to call them. And yeah, I've been talking for a long time. I don't know if you have any questions.
Well, I was going to say that we're getting right towards that's a great plus spot to end on, and I definitely agree. We've had talks about that before, about the people reinventing the wheel and creating add-ins or Dynamo scripts or things to solve a problem. I think there's some value in that, especially from the learning to code and the learning to get there. You know, if everyone has one problem that they solve inside of Dynamo, it helps. But I'd also agree that it would be nice that if Autodesk solve those problems so we didn't have to redo it. And with that being said, I would like to give Bill the final thought of the day.
Oh my goodness. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh my gracious, that's even better. Finally, somebody's doing something with IFC files, huh? It's been a long time since I've seen IFC files actually useful, so that's pretty cool. I was sitting here, fidgeting. I fidget with things. This is my latest, greatest thing. This is a shell of a temperature and humidity sensor. So as you were talking and demoing and all that stuff, I was wondering, how can I integrate this with the IFC.js stuff?
Yeah,
and how? Go ahead.
Yeah, actually, right now I'm working on Utility, which is a Norwegian company dedicated for its business is digital twin. Basically, they know a lot about sensors, information, and we are building a platform in which you can see the real-time information of the sensors in 3D with a BIM model. And this is the great thing about this. This is not a product, and this is not like a platform or whatever. It's a piece. And with this piece, with this open source and free forever piece, you can make this work together with other pieces that other people have done. I can make this work together with Electron. I can make this work together with React or Angular or a library to read sensor information, or with Arduino to do whatever I want to do. So in the end, this can integrate with literally the whole web development world. So in the end, if you ask me, what can I do with IFC.js? The answer is you can do literally anything that you could do with any JavaScript project, which is quite a lot.
Yeah, it is quite a lot. Because a while ago, I interviewed a gentleman from Autodesk about Project Dasher, which was built on the Forge API and was built for sensors like this. And it did some pretty cool things with filling in the room objects with different colors, the transparent colors, so that you can see where the hot zones and the cool zones are. And what was intrigued me about Dasher was its ability to not just color the whole room object one color, it actually did more of a heat map. So you could see where different things are as far as the sensors. This one's a little hotter in this side of the room versus that one is a little cooler on the other side of the room. So it would put gradations in the heat in the room for you for sort of a heat map. But I haven't been able to get Dasher, so hopefully we can get something working with this, which would be wonderful.
Yeah, generally when you talk about a software, you talk about, okay, this software costs whatever, and it has 500 functionalities. But when it comes to IFC.js, the question is not that. It's like, the blue ocean strategy. It's not about making more and more features to be, because for instance, now I have just implemented a DXF exporter from more or less from scratch to be able to export floor plans that you have in IFC directly to DXF, directly in the web. And because I have done that in IFC.js, everyone have that for free. So that means that is not a feature you can sell anymore, right? So as we build more and more features, we are somehow, in my opinion, equalizing the market, because if you pay thousands of dollars for 100 features, and in a year we have made like 50 features, the product that you pay for has devaluated half, because now half of those features are public domain, right?
It's more about availability, though, for me, than it is about paying or not paying for the features. So in other words, if the product's available and I can make the little thing or buy the little thing to make it all work and it does what I need it to do, that is a good thing. If it's free, that's a good thing too. But I don't know how you can be sustainable with giving everything away.
You know how much do I pay for my programming software every year? I mean,
well, it's not your
consider
programming software. It's the room you're in. It's the electricity you use. It's the food you consume. It's the living that you want to have. How does that? This is all wonderful. I think the project is great, but how is it going to be sustainable?
because for the big companies, it's much cheaper to participate in this project than to pay for Forge licenses, in a nutshell.
Right.
So it stays sustainable because this isn't what you do all the time. So the people that take advantage of IFC.js,
And to be clear,
this is just a part of it. That's right. Go ahead.
To be clear, yeah, sorry, I'm not saying any names, but we have had already a meeting with one of the big ones. And the meeting was something like, oh yeah, fantastic. You know that our company has invested millions in similar projects that were way worse than your project. And he was like clearly driving the conversation towards like, oh, maybe we want to buy you, But in the end, this, in my opinion, this is where the strength of the project is. I told him that he cannot buy IFC.js because it's not a product and it's not a company. There's no shares you can buy. Like literally the only thing you can do to stop the project is pay every and single, like all the developers to stop working on it. That's literally the only thing you can do. So in my opinion, I mean, obviously this is just a biased opinion, but it's something really scary because it changes it changes the rules of the game, right? It's not about
It does
building
change
a
the rules
product.
of the game for the people who have the knowledge to do the programming, the people who have the time to do the programming. But for the companies that don't have the time and don't have the knowledge, they need to buy that somewhere.
And that's why Autodesk and all those places aren't going to go away. I think this just shows the power of what open source and a community that backs an open source project can do.
I'm not trying to diss the product and say it's a bad product. I think it's great. It's really cool.
But we do need to see both sides of the story, and that's where you're being the devil's advocate is much appreciated.
My devil's advocate on that is how sustainable is it going to be?
Yeah,
and
actually,
hopefully the community takes it over and does what you say. That's just my worry.
I pay $100 every year
Mhm.
for my programming software. And the
Sure.
reason why I pay $100 and people have to pay thousands of dollars for BIM software is because making, like, you can find free programming software, which means that the people that actually sell a product must be more competitive and offer a
Mhm.
cheaper product. So it's not about substituting the big ones. It's about equalizing the market. So the price of those products is, like,
Mhm.
in
I
my
don't.
opinion, more fair.
I don't see IFC.js as replacing Revit or replacing them, or replacing the other products. I see this as a way that a BIM manager or a company that has some programmers can get involved and create something unique and create a unique product for their client. So they can use this solution, for example, in the example I gave with the temperature sensors, to create a unique product or a compelling product that makes you want to continue to use that engineer or architect, and say, okay, here's your building, here's all the temperature sensors, here's how it looks on a web page, where this is all the back end stuff already done. So all we have to do now is create the front end, make it look, brand it, make it look like it's part of the company, use your back end product to do the viewing and the coloring and all of that other good stuff.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Like, I don't think that this will substitute anything. This just gives thousands of people free tools to have the same
Mhm.
power as Autodesk Forge, so they can build the solutions and get into the game with the same weapons.
Absolutely. Mhm. Absolutely.
And with that, I think we're right where we need to end with a great conversation. I always find it's fascinating when we end an episode when we're at a crescendo, when there's great conversation, a great topic, which definitely means we're going to have you back on, Antonio, when we have some new developments and new things to talk about. But
Right.
until then, as Bill normally says, thanks for listening.
Yeah. Thank you very much.